Kwekwe Olukut, hello, Tansei, et bonjour. Je tiens à souligner aussi que je m'adresse à vous à Ottawa, donc depuis le territoire traditionnel non cédé du peuple algonquin Anishinaabe. Today, we held and just concluded a few minutes ago the 2023 National Roundtable on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and 2SL LGBTQI+ people. I'm pleased that we had these meaningful conversations with Indigenous, federal, provincial, territorial representatives, and want to thank them for their openness in and willingness to explore concrete actions in this critically important work. Yesterday's discovery of a missing Flin Flon woman and the recent murders that took place in Winnipeg in particular are a sobering and far too often reminder of the urgent need to address this ongoing crisis and tragedy in Canada. Nous sommes conscients que beaucoup de défis nous attendent, mais nous comprenons aussi qu'il y a des opportunités de réaliser des progrès tangibles, des alliés, des femmes, des filles autochtones et des personnes bispirituelles, et de reconnaître et de respecter les droits des cultures autochtones, et de travailler ensemble pour mettre fin finalement à cette violence. Nous avons la responsabilité de trouver des solutions qui dépassent les frontières. Les appels à la justice du rapport final de l'enquête nationale sur les femmes et les filles autochtones disparues et assassinées constituent notre feuille de route pour sortir de cette crise. We've heard from many Indigenous partners, including the National Family and Survivors Circle that was present today, that acceleration of Call for Justice 1.7 is critical, calling for the establishment of a national Indigenous and human rights ombudsperson. It's why today I am pleased to announce the appointment of Ministerial Special Representative Jennifer Moore-Rattray to help accelerate the progress on this call for justice. Ms. Moore-Rattray was formerly the Executive Director of the National Inquiry on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Her experience and her knowledge is critically important to this work. Through the engagement with families, survivors, and partners, Ms. Moore-Rattray will provide us with guidance and advice on how to best address this critical call for justice on accountability in particular in a way that is both meaningful and relevant. Families, survivors, and communities have long called for greater monitoring and accountability. Call for Justice 1.10 calls for an independent mechanism to formally report on the progress. It should not be up to the federal government, any provincial territorial entity to be giving themselves grades. To that end, I'm also pleased to announce that Innovation 7, an Indigenous organization, will engage with Indigenous partners to consider the options for an oversight mechanism to track progress and enhance accountability. This will also be working with, they will also be working with families and survivors to ensure their approaches are informed by lived experiences, knowledge, and wisdom. Nous devons poursuivre ce travail important aux côtés des partenaires autochtones. La violence actuelle à l'encontre des femmes, des filles et des personnes de LGBTQI+ autochtones doit cesser. Cela requiert l'attention et l'action toute particulière de tous les niveaux du gouvernement, car nous avons tous un rôle à jouer pour mettre fin à cette crise. Miigwech, Kuyanamik, Marcy, thank you et merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now take questions from media. One question, one follow-up each. Please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. Once your turn has passed, please ensure the raise hand function is deactivated. If your news outlet isn't mentioned, please mention your name and the outlet you work for. Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions de la part des journalistes. Une question de suivi chacun. Veuillez utiliser la fonction main levée et je vais vous donner la parole. Une fois votre tour passé, veuillez vous assurer que la fonction main levée soit désactivée. Si votre nom et votre journal n'apparaît pas, veuillez mentionner votre prénom et le journal pour lequel vous travaillez. First question, première question. I don't see any hands. Would you mind checking the raise hand function is activated? Matteo?
Yeah, Matteo, okay. Matteo Simulero, Canada's National Observer. I'm just, so we had the National Inquiry closing ceremony in 2019. Now it's 2023, and we just announced a position to help develop a position. One of the big criticisms of this government was that there was a lack of urgency. Can you just speak to why it's taken so long to then develop a position, and if maybe respond to those critics who have been calling inaction and a lack of urgency from this government?
Yeah, Mateo, excellent question. And I would like to give you a better answer than perhaps I am going to give you. Clearly, we knew, and Indigenous peoples, particularly the most vulnerable Indigenous women and girls and the LGBTQ community, knew very well before 2019 the urgency of this situation. Coming up with a national action plan did take some time, and some would say an unacceptably long period of time. And putting that into place has not come without significant financial investments. I think what we see and what we've seen over the last little while is that the results are trailing. Clearly, and I think back up to when the action plan was announced a little over a year and a bit ago, one of the nascent criticisms was there wouldn't be any money attached to it. Well, there was, and significant amounts of money. Making sure that that is being deployed in a systematic fashion, a systemic way, the way the final report asks us to do, and not simply driven by individual tragedies, although those are meaningful and must be addressed as they arise, was one that was crucially important. Now I think with what we see is results trailing, even in some cases, women and girls being more vulnerable coming out of the pandemic, we see very legitimate cries for accountability that can't be the federal government coming out and saying, here's all the great stuff we're doing, this is the grade we're giving it ourselves, and the tragedy continues. Clearly, what we need to do is have a process whereby there is an ombudsperson and a formal mechanism of accountability, not only for the federal government, but across society, including territorial and provincial governments. Jennifer Rattray-Moore is extremely well regarded in that area. I can't single-handedly and should not single-handedly in one sort of fell swoop appoint an ombudsperson without the proper consultation with survivors groups and families. I think regardless of who that person would be, they would be hamstrung from the get-go because the proper consultation had not been done. If you look into Jennifer's CV, you will see that that is someone who will be able to inform me, the minister, as to what the next steps are for an ombudsperson and undertake that consultation. So yes, it's frustrating to see time elapse. This is not a plan to do a plan. This is a person that is well regarded that will be able to put into place a number of mechanisms in order to make sure there is an ombudsperson that will have a proper role, will have an ability to answer that call for justice 1.7 and the corresponding one in 1.10. That isn't the end of the story, but I think it is an important step forward to a wide, broad demand that had been coming across society from survivors and families and organizations for a long time, and it is an important outcome from today's discussion.
One follow-up then is what would be the timeline then to develop this ombudsperson? When do you think is there kind of a plan to or timelines or goalposts to reach?
Well, I'd like it as soon as possible, but I'm not the only voice in this, and I think people may want a broader type of consultation. It won't impede the minister's special representative from getting back to me with interim recommendations as well as a step plan. But that is rightly one that I'm not going to Bigfoot her right here and tell her what her timeline is. We're going to sit down and have that conversation with her.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mateo.
Thank you. Ganicio.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. Is Jennifer's mandate just about the ombudsperson? Because the call for justice also, that specific call for justice also talks about a human rights tribunal.
She'll be giving, Ganicio, thank you. Excuse me. She'll be giving me a broad spectrum of advice on both Call for Justice 1.7 and 1.10. So it could include mechanisms for accountability. I think we have to look at the interplay between all the other instruments that we have with respect to Indigenous matters, dealing with accountability to make sure that that we aren't tripping over each other. But again, I don't want to speculate as to what her views on that would be, but I obviously favor as broad a mandate as possible.
Fraser? Over to you, Fraser.
Am I still?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now? Okay, good. Afternoon, Minister. I guess I was wondering, you have had 4 years to consult with communities since the report was released. It comes up at every anniversary meeting, and why aren't you announcing the ombudsperson today rather than a person that's going to search out an ombudsperson? Because I'm sure that's the feedback I'm going to get tomorrow when I follow up with groups.
Well, like I mentioned it to Mateo, Fraser, it would be, and again, it would hamstring any ombudsperson as good as they and as qualified as they would be if I were simply to announce it out of the blue. We know that there have been calls for a long time, but frankly, the important work has not been done in making sure we're getting the right person in the right place to play and exercise this role. I would like to see, obviously, that time frame compressed, but I don't want to. I don't want to take the wind away from the work that Jennifer Rattray will be doing once we have the opportunity to talk after this announcement. And so, yes, sure, I'd like to see a tight timeline, but we need this done in the proper way. And to be quite frank, the work on accountability and in particular an ombudsman has not been as fleshed out as it probably should have been. But again, realizing that and then taking the next step in terms of action means that we had to put in place this interim option, which puts into place someone that is highly qualified to give me frank and honest advice as to how to do this in the right way.
Okay, and I just had one follow-up. I guess just with the time that has elapsed now, like the 4 years, that's getting on quite a bit, and I think that and we've both been at a number of press conferences where there is a bit of cynicism out there. There's frustration that the calls to justice have not been acted upon by the government, and a key part of that is the ombudsperson. Are you not a bit concerned at this point of losing momentum of you're going on years now since this report was actually delivered to the government? They've had lots of time to look at it, make decisions, and yet here we are with many of the calls to justice not acted upon and not even in a position with someone that can oversee them. Are you concerned about that?
That is the point in part of this announcement, Fraser. I think when you look at, I'm not someone that is in a position to have the luxury of even considering a loss of steam and momentum. The tragedies such as those in Winnipeg are constant reminders to people like me, and should be constant reminders to all Canadians that we need to do a whole hell of a lot better, and we shouldn't be satisfied with anything that we do, regardless of the quantum of the investment, until every Indigenous woman and child and 2SL LGBTQIA person in this country is safe. And the reality today is the tragedy is ongoing, and they're not. It would be a huge misrepresentation of the work that's been done, and highly insulting to Indigenous organizations on the ground to suggest nothing is being done. There are people, and I will concede at times on shoestring budgets, that are spending every waking hour trying to keep people safe, whether it's downtown Winnipeg, downtown Montreal, downtown Vancouver, and the federal government needs to be there to support them. I'd say that in an urban context, but across Canada in the far north as well, we have announced a series of shelters. I've seen some built myself, housing, announced systemic approaches to a problem that does need to be approached systemically. the painful reality is it does take time, and it does take time for those results to show, in addition to perhaps the even more precarious position that people have been put in, having been shut in for the balance of 2 years. So, you know, the work continues, and I think some of the outcome from today, which perhaps we will be accused of just talking, but we cannot do this without talking, but we have to complement it with action. And I think we have to do it a whole hell of a lot quicker.
Thank you very much. Shashan?
Oui. Ma question, elle sera en français.
Oui, allez-y.
Comment l'annonce d'aujourd'hui va faire la différence? Merci.
Please ensure you're on mute.
Merci. Il y avait un retour de...
Fraser, can you put yourself on mute, please?
Désolé, Shushan, il y avait un écho d'un autre journaliste.
Oui, de mon collègue.
C'est toujours les collègues qui
dérangent.
Écoutez, ce qu'on a entendu haut et fort, c'est qu'il y avait un besoin criant d'avoir quelqu'un, un ombudsman en place pour surveiller, pour s'assurer que le gouvernement fédéral, le gouvernement provincial, territorial, le cas échéant, vraiment répondait aux obligations du rapport final de l'ANFADA. Ça a traîné de la patte. Cette mesure que nous annonçons aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire la mise en place d'une représentative au ministre, soit moi, celle de Jennifer Moore-Rattray, est une étape intérimaire très importante pour pouvoir mettre en place une institution qui pourra tenir le gouvernement redevable à ses obligations sous les appels à la justice de l'ANFADA. Donc, une mesure de transparence très, très, très importante. J'espère pouvoir travailler avec cette personne de façon très rapprochée pour avoir évidemment un ombudsman en place le plus vite possible sans enlever le travail que devra effectuer Mme Moore-Rattray pour me donner son opinion informée sur ce qui devra et les mesures qui devront être reprises. L'objectif ultime, ce serait d'avoir une institution qui auquel le gouvernement fédéral devra rendre des comptes pour s'assurer que le progrès avance. Et donc, une étape très importante, mais évidemment pas la fin de la discussion et loin de la chose.
Est-ce que je peux poser une autre question?
Absolument.
OK, attendez, je vais prendre la caméra. Oups. Est-ce que les familles qui ont perdu des proches, est-ce qu'ils peuvent avoir confiance? Tu sais, la plupart des gens ont vraiment de la misère à avoir confiance. Est-ce que ces familles-là peuvent avoir confiance en nouvelle action, mettons, nouvelle décision qui a été prise?
Ben, il faudra en juger par les résultats. Je sais que la méfiance est de mise est justifiée vis-à-vis du gouvernement fédéral, gouvernement provincial, territorial, peu importe. Ce sont des gens, évidemment, plus souvent que non, qui ont été laissés pour compte dans le contexte d'une tragédie, d'une perte familiale. Alors, je leur demande pas de me faire confiance. Ce serait arrogant de présumer qu'ils me le donneraient simplement par une annonce comme aujourd'hui ou même par des investissements. Il reste qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'investissements au cours des dernières années, mais ce que j'ai dit en anglais, que je vais répéter en français aussi, c'est que les résultats traînent malheureusement de la patte et c'est très malheureux, évidemment, pour les familles qui subissent les effets de cette tragédie qui continue à travers le Canada, malgré des investissements qui, il ne faut pas les sous-estimer, sont très importants. Il reste qu'il y a un mécanisme qui n'a pas été mis en vigueur et qui répond aux appels à la justice 1.7 et 1.10 Et aujourd'hui, on annonce cette position qui sera très importante dans la mise en œuvre de ces deux appels très importants.
Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Y a-t-il d'autres questions? Do we have any more questions? Give it a few more seconds. Any more questions? Okay, this now concludes our press conference. If any of you has additional follow-up questions, feel free, sorry, my computer just went off. Feel free to send us an email and it'll be our pleasure to address them. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. Si vous avez davantage de questions, veuillez nous envoyer un courriel et il nous fera plaisir d'y répondre. Miigwech, Kuyanamek, merci, thank you, merci.